Well, it is 9 o'clock. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting together, our meeting to order for the Downtown Transit Station Steering Committee. It is June 17th at 9 a.m. The first item on our agenda, the only item on our agenda today, is the draft site selection criteria. The action we're being asked to consider is to review and possibly revise and vote on the draft site selection criteria to post for public comment. Adam, I've seen you back to the board.
Yeah. Well, that. So, yeah, thank you I'll just highlight that point. We've done this before where today's vote is about having a package that's clear enough or provides the information this group believes is important for public comment. You'll see all this information again for discussion at our next meeting after the public period. So what we're trying to work on today is what we'll be putting out for just about 3 weeks for the public to engage in on this second step of the work. So a reminder on that timeline, we talked back in April, we took a first pass at what the criteria would look like for how we measure any site idea, and got some feedback from that. I'll try to highlight some of the ways I incorporated your feedback into the criteria as they look today. If you have other revisions or tweaks, we can make those as well. Plan is for us to be out for public comment between this meeting and your next meeting. So we'll try to put out this information by tomorrow and then have it close Friday before this group meets again. Package kind of that information back up so you all can see how the public responded to this information. They are looking for justice. Then that puts us on track for a vote on the second step to City Commission in August. I'll highlight there's some overlap here. You know, this group and the City Commission have already defined the boundary within which sites will be evaluated. And so we have not put out a survey for specifically soliciting specific site ideas yet. We thought that'd be strange to put out like a step 3 survey, follow with a step 2 survey. So I think our general plan is to try to put out step 2 criteria survey, like I said, tomorrow. And then I think we'll wait about 1 week and then push out the step 3. That should provide at least a 6-week period for people to be giving specific site ideas. And on the back end, staff will be trying to evaluate those as they come in so that they're ready for you all to get close to that August meeting. You want to start looking at the actual site ideas. So just another way to look at the timeline and talk about this part of the work. So, right, pick criteria that can help take things off the table if they're infeasible, can help you all rank, the different things you care about with the site. So we're at in April, we gave you all an initial list, and we're at the point where make adjustments again if needed before public comment. Our outreach looks a little bit different this time around. Not so much of us out on the platform, the downtown station platform, like talking directly with writers. That's be a difficult way to engage in this topic because it's more technical. And so I'll reiterate, get you thinking about, really do need to identify people who might join us for a 1-hour focus group, probably over a lunch hour. And so we're asking your help with folks that would be interested in doing that. In its simplest form, we'd probably just have those meetings here in this room. So it could be people who could get here by the bus or drive, park in our lot. But we need to start collecting names and contacts as soon as feasible so that in this next 3 weeks, we can be setting up See,
The people that I've talked to is interested, probably needs to kind of know what the date is.
we can certainly, even today, I could send this group some specific dates and we could start posting that. We thought about also just posting that out here in the lobby. People want to sign up. So that makes sense that people would say yes or no based on what the date and time actually is. So I'll take that as an action item to do before today is over and get that info out.
Perhaps can you clarify how the survey and the focus group are similar or not for people that might be?
We always try as much as we can. We try to make however you digitally engage with public feedback to match what we do in person. It's not always perfect, but I think the focus group would review the same information as digitally. Try to it provides a conversational space to work through that same information. So people have questions. That's maybe it leads to some discussion that way when we get that feedback and the online feedback, we can bring that all together and present back to you all.
So if you've already completed the survey, the focus group might be somewhat redundant. Is that
Be redundant with information.
just want to make that clear to people that it's not a separate or different conversation, very similar.
Yeah, there's not some exclusive information that focus group folks will have access to that general public won't. I think some people, when they look at the online survey, it'll make sense to them, or they'll be able to digest that information, make thoughtful comments. Others, that could be a tough format. Feedback.
A couple things for the
Yeah.
focus group. It'd be easier for me if I had like a business or something with an email on it, because then I can say there's going to be a focus group. Here's an email this person if you want to be on it. That's easier for me than recording that person's email. And then the second thing is it's maybe the focus groups, but maybe the stakeholders. I'm interested in having Cottonwood on there. We do a lot of work with Cottonwood. Cottonwood uses the buses a lot, and yeah, a lot of my Cottonwood regulars have really drastically changed the way they've used the bus with the new system. I'd like them to be more involved with conversation.
Yeah, last time around with stakeholder at the DLI chamber, we can still do this. Because it doesn't hurt. We can email to the different listservs and groups that help to encourage people to take the online survey, but this could be a good one for us to try to get in-person stuff scheduled. So I don't know. Some of these different groups, DLI, Cottonwood, look at the others that we emailed last time around, see if in this late June to late July time period, groups have meetings already scheduled if they have 10 or 15 minutes for us.
And before it sounded like who exactly are you hoping to focus on with the focus groups, like the people that were all presenting? I remember that last time you mentioned grad students picking.
I think just as a general thought, writers are less likely to participate in the online survey, so it would be nice. But also, I think this is a good, ahead of human nature to get involved at the last minute when things are kind of rubber sitting the road. This is an opportunity to have a discussion while we're still in the middle of things with people. So, writers, I think, might have a tougher time engaging in this highly technical online survey, and also probably all stakeholder groups would be good to be talking about this so that there's some understanding or confidence in the way we talking through sites. People will be very interested in step 3, right? Concerns that we'll hear from a lot of folks. Then it would be good as this group starts kind of organizing and ranking site ideas that much of the general public stakeholders have a good idea of how that ranking is being done. We'll certainly explain it as we do that third step. But how's that? For
Cool.
yeah. Yeah. I think we'll for interested stakeholder groups that have time to meet with us, we'll make time to meet them during this time period. I think that'll be important. Okay, sorry about the small text. For folks online, I think you can zoom in. I think you can use your Control plus or scroll zoom in. So we have organized the criteria into 14 criteria. One change you'll notice is the development of a scoring system. So in thinking through how we'd even start conversations about this, you know, the off the table criteria, it's somewhat obvious if something scores at a possibility or infeasibility. But for all the others, there's some variation in how if things could go. We've assigned a scoring system, opened a conversation about that. We feel it's good or bad or needs change. We haven't really spent a great deal of time thinking about weighting, weights of scores is what I mean. So, you know, just by nature of some criteria having more categories, they kind of end up with more points assigned to them. So, so I don't know if that's perfect or not perfect, but that's just something to keep in mind. So as we go through these, that's definitely kind of an area I'm interested if there's any feedback on. I think I'll try to point out where some of the comments came from. April came into this, and then I might have one that I'll ask the group. I think it's possible we could eliminate it and reduce down to 13, but I'll ask you to change. So essentially, I'll go through each of these one by one. Okay, so just how each of these pages is organized, I list the criteria name at the top, what is the question we're asking to score, what the scoring system is, then some description. Sometimes I am only able to provide a text description. I tried to provide visuals as much as possible, so that helps me kind of frame things. So this first criteria is about just there being enough space for the different components of this project as are needed. The description shows the required elements of the site, and to the right there's one example of what I call like a puzzle piece. So that 50 by 20 foot rectangle is about what you need for a single bus bay, and so that plus puzzle pieces for some of the rest of these will help us in determining, some very limited design work. It's not engineering or measuring turning movements, but it will give this group a sense of, is the site big enough to get different site ideas? We can lay out these different things on top of a map. Say, okay, that looks like it's within the engineering error where they can figure out. So scoring on this one, it having sufficient space doesn't like gain a bunch of points. It just doesn't hurt the, there's this. And then if it's not have sufficient space, it's off the table. I'll preview that after we go through all of these. There are 3 examples of tried to just use the scoring system on 3 sites that are outside the boundary because I didn't want to influence sites within the boundary, but that'll maybe kind of put it all together and show you how it seems to function. Yeah, that might help us talk through scoring or how this is working as a system.
When you have on there wind protection, is that wind/sun protection? Like, or is it just kind of tucked in?
Yeah, that's a good point. That really means weather protection. It's a canopy and it's walls. It's a combination of the overhead protection, but also something vertical that would block
Okay.
winds.
Okay.
I think we, we might be thoughtful with how we talk about puzzle pieces. I think the overhead element we imagine fitting within the footprint of a bus bay, right? Some canopy is going to be over that, so it's not like an extra.
To the side. Okay.
The caveat being, I guess, the seating of pedestrian areas, you want that covered. So that'll be a puzzle piece, but you'll assume it's covered.
Okay.
So probably some clarity on that as we work through it.
I feel like this one's the most complicated one. Like all the others are easier for me to kind of do by myself. You know, like to think about like the traffic or to think about like events or any of those. But this is the one that like I'd have to rely on someone else showing me like how it would all work.
Yeah, and I don't think
The yardstick and.
Yeah. I like the puzzle pieces though, because as soon as you said I'm imagining
Yeah.
like a literal puzzle game dragging.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be practical for us to like, the general public member logs on to the survey. I'm not sure we'll be able to provide them. We don't expect them to have all the information they need to go ahead and map out those puzzle pieces themselves. This is kind of, we want people to know we have to look at this, and this group will need to react to something that staff helps put down on paper. So yeah, this one hopefully doesn't trip people up too much. I think people in their heads probably think like, I bet that's big enough in there, and that's probably good enough. Yes, as far as public, sure.
Would it be possible in that process to like kind of define a suggested square footage, size? So you could at least throw it out there so people could at least kind of be like,
Yeah.
yeah, that maybe isn't big enough. I don't know.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, just like at a minimum, this, that may be difficult because I understand you can format it.
Yeah, I was thinking it could be
Like it can be long, it could be a little bit wider. There's a lot of variables there. So I understand that may not be ideal, and it may be better just to let people take a guess, So
I mean, is it just as simple as 5 of those? So 250 long by 20, or 40 by whatever. I don't know.
well, and
It matters. But like,
where it is, you could have 3 over here, 2 over here.
is it just that simple though, to kind of think? I mean, but
Yeah.
you have to kind of
But then plus all the other, right, like the rest of
Yeah.
stuff like that.
There's forth between, there's so many configurations. Sure, we could show people here's like 3 example configurations and tell them these are not the only ones. Sure. And people look at it and think these are the only 3 combinations.
Yeah. So
I guess
Shut down.
So maybe it's better to just let people speculate and go from there.
We need 5 of those.
Yeah, I think naturally, as this group has big lists and working through how things have scored and been ranked, all of that. If there's any site that seems like it's a viability, we'll be laying out the puzzle pieces. Sure. We'll have maps kind of for each of these sites. So at that point, I think that will be a lot of justifiable judgment.
Are there 5 bays out here, or are there more than 5?
There's 8 on the central platform. So there's 4 on each side. And then there's those 2 regional bays off to the side.
Okay.
So I'll note too that I've changed this presentation from the one that was sent out just to reformat a little bit. So if you print it out and are looking at stuff, all the same information, just repackaged. So criteria 2, is it part of this parking lot redevelopment RFP that the city's going through? KDOT's recommendation, our strong suggestion that we do not consider these sites in our work because of the complexities of public-private partnership, the time that can take. And the cost, it's just complicated. So these 3 parking lots at 10th of Vermont, 8th in Vermont, and 7th in New Hampshire are the 3 lots the city has out and is receiving possible proposals for parking lot redevelopment. Large mixed-use buildings, more or less.
So those are effectively off limits.
So for the sake of this project and the guidance we've got, we're kind of off the table. Indicating those are off the table.
You said there, like, all three of these parking lots have some commercial development being thought.
Possibly. Yeah, the city is receiving proposals and considering that we'll advance any of those.
Which agencies receiving that, which proposals?
The city of Lawrence is receiving the proposals because they're the owners of the property.
Sure, but
And that's not yet public who's been bidding.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually the bidding process isn't public until there's some selection. Because there's, all the work behind the scenes to make a selection is.
I think it may have been public who submitted some,
Okay.
because there somewhere I saw something that, and maybe it was just a report, but.
But maybe economic developments put that out.
Mhm.
All right, third criteria, this map I've updated from the one if you have it printed out. So working with GIS team, is the site on city-owned land or not? And so that includes some parcels of land, so things like parking lots, park areas, northwest corner of this site, riverfront garage. You see that large area there. So this map helps define those areas. All the green is basically right of way, so it's streets and a little more than streets. Right of way usually extends beyond the curb line of streets. So it's not always exactly this, but it usually includes the space between the curb and the public sidewalk as well. So that's kind of what right of way usually develops to.
two of the other locations we had referred to before was the one by the Amtrak station.
Yes.
Is that on there too?
Yes.
But that is,
This is not, I'll have to look at why that doesn't define as, I'm not sure that is city-owned land. Now the building is.
Because the blue squares are city owned.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah. And how about the parking lot just to the west of the, is that that little tiny green thing? Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's about Amtrak.
is the railroad still technically own the land, maybe?
Must be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they certainly own all the right of way in that area.
Absolutely.
I mean, a big portion of
Yes,
it.
they may technically still own the land.
Yeah.
That may be what it is, but the city may own the building.
Not be surprised by that.
Yep.
So scoring on this one, we did break it out more for just kind of a yes, no, because private is not necessarily off the table. It could provide complications, but if something is private, but the owner is willing to sell, then it's not an off the table item. It's, I don't know where the money will come from to purchase a private site, but I think we'll get recommendations for private sites. So I think in this process, we don't want to take that off the table. It'll just be something the group will consider as we get ins dropped on private sites. People are indicating we'll start reaching out to the property owner just to say, like, in this process, this possibility, is there even a willingness? We're not here to negotiate price, but are you even interested in entertaining this? So if an owner is like, absolutely not, then we can go ahead and score it on the table. Okay, this might make moot our Amtrak discussion. So FEMA flood hazard zones, there's not a lot that impact our sites within the boundary, but there are a couple of areas. One of those is Amtrak. That's in the 0.2% annual chance of flood hazard. And so that's going to be an area that the feds are not going to want us to spend federal money building on a site that could be flooded. And so that area, as well as Watson Park, are the two areas that show up within our boundary, and basically rule them out for potential sites. Now, Watson Park, if you think about the right of way nearby it, maybe still on the table. Also that, but the actual, as we get into that ground space, is not necessarily a.
If there was some mitigation, could the area be reconsidered, or is it just outright?
Yeah, I think this is kind of the guidance we got from our state and federal partners on, like, when there's options not in a floodway or a flood hazard zone, they want you to do that.
talking about a significant cost to raise grant level. So yeah.
Yeah, like we heard those discussions in the wetlands purchasing. But we talked a lot about the mitigation costs. So
It's significant.
it was interesting to see, like,
Frankly, it's a very good sustainability thing. The city had out. It's a park that can receive floodwaters, you know,
Absolutely.
good use of space. So, yeah, we might impact that if we could have done. Okay, historic context area. This is something that can be mitigated. So you'll notice this is not an off the table thing. We note if it is not within a historic context area, it scores a little better just because it provides more flexibility. But if it is within a historic context area, that's fine. It may result in us needing to consider higher priced materials, you know, to fit different historic features. So that's kind of the thought behind scoring, or why we want to look at this, is it'll take extra work to fit within historic context. You know, broadly, I don't think if we develop here, we're doing some wild modern piece of architecture that doesn't fit at all with downtown. If we do here, we do fit within downtown. I think probably the goal of the project to have features that fit anyways within the context area, but there certainly will be additional steps, process to go through with the planning department on if we are those context areas.
What's the dark red versus the light pink?
Overlapping. It's just overlapping. Yeah. So every one of these little boxes you see within here is the actual property that is designated historic.
Got
And then it's a 250-foot buffer that creates that context zone. And so the dark areas are just a bunch of overlapping.
Who overlaps?
Yeah, there's multiple properties near each other, and you've got shading.
The Venn.
Yeah, so it's not like here is any, you know, if there's any more work to do.
Yeah, it's just a few more historic buildings that block.
Yeah.
That are on register.
Okay, so rezoning. This is an interesting one. So again, this is not an off the table issue. This is very similar to historic resources, where it's like rezoning is not a thing that can't be done, but it is extra process, extra time, cost. There's some interesting issues though with the rewrite of the land development code, and we're in the middle of that process. So right now there are at least 6 or 7 different zoning districts within our boundary area. All of those likely allow a bus transfer area under this major utilities and services use. So broadly, big picture, every zoning district has a list of allowable uses, and you can do some of those by right. You don't have to ask anybody for permission to do a certain thing. Some of them you can do, but only by special use permit. So you've got to go through a process that kind of says you'll meet certain conditions, that your use will fit in whatever area you're in.
Would that kind of process put the federal funds at risk as a deadline?
I don't think we're as worried about that process. You know, we're talking about maybe a few months, but and not years. Yeah, so I think there's less concern about that. This one.
Coworker was saying that the downtown, they're making also like a discussion of like a common consumption area. I don't know if that will like affect the zoning of spots so necessarily. And it's always, I think it was just like the first meeting, like the first informational meeting was happening. I was just looking at the information to see if there was anything that like discussed anything relating like road closing or anything, you know, but that doesn't seem to be the case, obviously, but just in terms of zoning.
Yeah, and that's a good, you know, there's some stuff, common consumption you could think of maybe as like an overlay. It's not a zoning district that really kind of restricts use of your land.
Yeah.
But there's kind of this.
I bet our decisions too, or like in terms of the bus.
So yeah, like we try to want to be outside the conference.
Yeah.
Nearby
Request.
Right. Yeah. Nearby, but not yet. Yeah. Walking is.
Some of the, I just want to mention that the new code is still in draft form, but there's not, there is a new bus terminal use. That hasn't been listed as a use in the use table before this, but it is not allowed in either of the I think there's 2 zoning districts currently proposed for downtown. So I have a meeting with planning and the consultants in a couple of weeks about that, and just to talk through like I think what's some flexibility there. I'm not sure it was overly contemplated yet. There's so much complexity to this code update. So I don't have great concern about that. It's going to be a little while before that code's removed and in process, but we'll want to make sure if there is some indication that bus terminal is not allowed in a certain district, we'll consider that as an off the table thing. I have a hard time believing that's going to actually be true. Okay, net gain and lots of parking spaces. This map is not really useful at this zoomed out level, but each of these blue areas that you see here, there's a single dot at every parking stall on this GIS layer. So you can zoom in and see where all the parking spaces are. The general thought behind this is, if we move from our current location, that will allow recouping of metered parking spaces along that curb line to the tune of about 18 is what we're estimating. And so it is possible that we could gain overall parking spaces in this effort if we move to a space that has fewer than 18. The net result of gain. And then we broke up different categories of how many are lost, basically saying, the fewer that are lost, points that are gained as part of the evaluation process. This issue comes up a lot. It came up strongly 3 years ago. We were in a discussion about this. I'll take this point to note because I think it's going to be a good time for this. I think it's important to remember in this work that right now we've got 14 criteria. And so the hope is that no single one of these, other than the off-the-table ones, are overly driving decision-making. Hopefully this group's able to evaluate on all these different measures, these sites seem to be scoring well on most of them. So
Right, like the final choice won't be a mechanical score-based decision. It'll be us thinking about what the score is and just making an intentional choice about the pros and cons of the specific site, right?
I think that's a likely way it's gonna go. I think we could go through iterations of changing weights and try to make the mechanical score something you could hide behind. And I think that will take us years.
Yeah.
And so I think we'll get the scores good enough to give you an idea and hopefully put things on a list that seems reasonable. And then you can decide, like, you know what, I think number 8's better than number 6. I think, hopefully that's.
But like this one, even the parking space situation, depending on where those parking spots are in the downtown area, people have different opinions.
Absolutely, yes.
Because there are some areas where parking is underutilized downtown anyway. So people will feel differently about that. So, so that's not exactly a perfect, and I understand it's possible to put well, these are way different than these over here.
Yeah.
And so I would never suggest that.
There's a mix of short-term and long-term space.
Absolutely.
There's all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So this is hopefully it points us towards something that then you wrestle with.
Yeah.
So this, the question about park space is one that I think we could maybe drop. I'll talk through it, but we, early on thought about, will park space be impacted? This group cut out, South Park from the boundary. That's not a site we're considering anymore. And the only major remaining park is one that's within a FEMA flood zone. And so, maybe the edges do remain impacted. So maybe it's worthwhile, if there's a suggestion along one of the edges of Watson that's not in the flood zone area, maybe it's worth measuring yes or no is park space impacted. But this one, I think with the exclusion of South Park from the boundary itself, maybe is a little less determining. I don't think we're gonna fit into the Japanese garden. The Zen garden. I don't think that's gonna
I think
happen.
the access is going to also just kill that word.
Yeah.
It's hard to get close.
And a puzzle. Yeah. We don't have to answer that now, but as we work through these, I guess let me know what you think about the importance of this particular criteria.
I have a question, sorry. Did I interrupt someone? Is there a difference between park space and green space? Like, is there a significant green space on here that I'm not thinking of? Anything that's not a park, technically labeled a park? That,
Tree covers.
Seems like there's other parts of Lawrence. Would be for sure.
Can't really think of anything in that area that isn't basically asphalt, so, or buildings. So, I mean, maybe you could say this section along, whatever used to be Douglas County Bank, whatever it is now. The back side of that, you know, that area is some, but even that's mostly parking lot, so.
There's the orchard
Yeah, the private.
on, the private orchard on Vermont.
So
But again,
probably not big enough to put a depot in, and honestly, pretty sure it's not gonna be available. So, because I
That
think
one being
there's,
developed.
that's, well, every 3 years it's suggested, so I mean, you never, so I don't think that one's on the table anyway, but yeah, I think that's a fair question, though. Is there any other green spaces?
The only other spot I can think of is next to the Eldridge.
oh, yeah.
Well, that's not really green, it's just
Certainly not.
pebbles. No, I don't know. And also
In
yet,
terms of empty.
yeah, but so yet again, probably,
Just get heavy buses on.
I don't think you're gonna fit that in the park, the less space there.
I think, sorry, I was just gonna say, I think impact too, it's ambiguous, and maybe, I don't know if it ends up being actually on the edges of Watson, and that means that more people actually have access to the park, which also seems like.
As I say, that doesn't actually seem like a bad thing in this situation.
Right, yeah,
So,
sure. Or the green space, right?
So I'll keep going through them, but think about this one. I will want to come back to this and decide if we need to be asking on scoring. Okay, criteria number 9. Proximity to the center of downtown. We talked about that generally being 9th and Mass. So basically here we've dropped pin at 9th and Mass, done radius walking distances that extend beyond our boundary, and see, we don't even have anything a 20-minute walk away from that center of mass within the boundary. So scoring of this, basically say if you're close to that center, you score higher than if you're farther away. Just thinking through the access to most destinations downtown. Transportation disadvantage zones. So where we look at scoring, if you look off to the right side, there is, this is one of the ways we frequently measure how equitable our service is being delivered in the city. And so transportation disadvantage zones look at a host of demographics, tie them together, and people that fit more of these categories are more likely to be transportation disadvantaged, have a harder time moving around the area. So if you have a disability, if you have no vehicles in your household, if you're very young or very old and don't have a driver's license or can't drive, all these different things, when the more and more of them overlap, the more likely it is it's tough to move around. So we structure our bus stop improvements looking at this to try to do improvements in higher scoring TD zones, or we do the lower scoring TD zones. We looked at this map through the route redesign process to make sure we were serving those areas correctly. We deploy our electric buses to serve higher scoring TD zones more than other zones, equal to or more than other zones. So in this case, the scoring basically adds a higher score if we locate this transfer area in a zone that has more transportation disadvantage folks, thinking that it would just provide better access. And we had some internal staff discussions about noise and emissions and things like that. I think some of that is becoming less of an issue as we continue to electrify our fleet. And so wrestle with that a bit, but still think that it would be more at higher score to happen in higher T zones. You can see we don't have any 4 to 6 zones in our boundary area, but we've got 3 different scoring areas. Criteria 11, I don't have good visual for this yet. I might try to figure out one, but it was tough as I thought through it. Really the next 2 or 3, I think, provide some subjectivity in how we're going to look at them and score them. And yeah, staff will make our best guess at it. And then we all have other things we have thought of. But this is about how easy it is to approach or depart from multiple directions. So I'll provide the example if it's on a one-way street, or if it's somehow a space that's kind of hard to get to and from. It requires a lot of out of direction looping to get to it. That would be worse than if it was at a site that was pretty easy to get to from those directions. The thought being the 5 routes currently served down there basically are a star pattern away from the downtown area. So just trying to make it at a place ideally that's easy to get to.
And is where it is right now, is that considered easy or not?
If I were to score it, I'd probably put it in the middle category. You know, you can get there relatively easy. It's kind of odd to have the one-way dead end that you run into. Yeah, I would think it's like somewhere probably. I don't know, Eddie.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
All right, 12, cost driving factors. So we had some discussion last time about making sure there was, or scoring a site better if it had existing positive like ADA circulation, talked about mid-block crossings, or just safe pedestrian movements in the area. This is where I put that into. I put it here because I think no matter what site is selected, we'll engineer safe ADA movements. It may be at a cost. So it's possible that some sites might already have some good infrastructure that doesn't have to be rebuilt, that makes that a better ADA crossings and movements, but that could be a cost driving factor, along with there were discussions around lighting. Is there good lighting at the site already or not? That's another thing that we're not going to just live with bad lighting at a site that's chosen. We'll put in appropriate lighting, but it'll just be at a cost. When we significant slope, when we did some limited site evaluation 3 years ago, some of the parking lots in the downtown area have perhaps an imperceptible slope, but when engineers looked at it, they're like, you're going to need a 3 or 4 or 5 foot retaining wall on the backside of that, and remove quite a bit of land to make that flat enough for buses not to bottom out as they enter. And so I think some things like that might come into play, possibly. Folks have brought up before the Reuters site, the Reuters Oregon building, and there's some strange configuration of parking lots back there. And suggestion of entrance and exit off of Rhode Island, which has like a very steep kind of entrance to the, so that site's challenging for a few reasons, but that's like something we'll want to highlight probably for the public as we filter sites using this criteria. It's could possibly seem like a really good idea, and also there's maybe this big cost driving factor that is going to be a reality if selected. Again, let's try to visualize this for folks. Okay, this one I did find a way to visualize. So what level of anticipated impact is there for downtown event reroutes? So Lawrence loves parades. We have street closures in the downtown area. And so I put on this map the ones I could think of that are most often closed. There's definitely events that end up closing sections that are different than the blue areas here, but I was just trying to think through kind of the obvious ones. And so I put Match Street from 7th all the way through South Park. You know, it's a common parade route. So the St. Patrick's Day parade, I think, goes over the bridge. Other parades are shorter. So, but I think that's what I could think of.
And the Juneteenth one started in front of the library.
And that one started technically. So the 100 blocks on the east side of Mass, 8th, 9th, and 10th have been blocked for different things. I think Art to Go is the most recent at the 10th. Busker Fest and Bourgeois Pig, you know, they do some different things on these blocks. So And then in front of the art center on New Hampshire is a common closure for a different thing. So if there's ones I'm kind of missing that do pop up a lot, happy to add it to this map before it goes out. But
I think Busker Fest this year did close. I mean, I don't know how common this is, but they closed like the maybe 800 block of New Hampshire too.
Yeah, this year was different than it had been before.
Yeah, it was like small.
Yeah, they went all the way up to New Hampshire this year instead of
Well, technically,
closing the east.
it's technically halfway out because you could still get to the parking lot. But that will probably happen again this year.
Okay.
Just from the discussions I've heard, people are pretty pleased with that layout. So I would expect that to happen again.
So we're talking like this half block.
Yeah, and well, they ran it from
Half block
Or did they run it all?
direction.
I was all the way.
yeah, it was a significant closure. Yeah.
So I could certainly extend
Yeah. I mean,
block and then have that.
and I think that's probably the only event, at least in the near future, that you will see closing that. I don't know that anybody else is going to want to take up that type of closure.
If the library,
But
if the library wasn't, the site of the library wasn't being used for transit, would that street be more likely to be used for events?
That's what I was going to ask Mark. If there's been a conversation about if it was not there,
Is this kind of a result of
the library
because it's
street, right?
I think we like to use the lawn for a lot of stuff. I don't know. I feel like whenever we proposed ideas of doing street fest, everyone's like, permits, no.
Right.
No shit.
Yeah, which
Well, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the permits aren't that difficult to get typically, so
Right.
people just don't know what. Oh, I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
If you have a space not to close the street, I understand.
Yeah.
I think they did for George Clinton. I think that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, I think block.
But you're right. Maybe once the bus is gone, they might,
Get more of it.
yeah, be inclined to use it.
AT&T closes stop from time to time, and they got the crane in there. Fantastic.
Yep.
That's true.
Well, I know we're probably not going to catch everything here.
Sure.
Events are so kind of changing that I think we probably get proposals and new stuff all the time. But just trying to capture, like, for this group to think about, we're pretty sure have these parades, all, we should think about what
I
the
think that
main
was
for, yeah.
I mean, because they, 6 different parades a year at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Runs.
Okay, this is the last criteria, and I'll briefly go through the 3 examples. So this line storm, what level of anticipated traffic flow impacts are there? So this one also, depending as we go through the scoring, I might need to consult city engineer on some of this too. But this trying to get a high level view of, like, I think I mentioned 3 years ago it came up. This site might work if you change this 2-way street to a 1-way street. So that I would, when I mentioned that, the city engineering is like, we have to think about what that means for where people will then drive. And so if any pins are dropped or ideas come up that would create the question of, like, this could work if this was a 1-way street, or if this was only open to buses, or if this was closed, I think that'll have to be kind of evaluated. And so the scoring system here is, the lowest impact to traffic flows towards better, and then the very high impact to traffic flows. So I, again, provide 3 reviews of sites that were outside of our current boundaries. We didn't influence anything unfairly. So this, I looked at the Union Pacific Depot, provided the scoring on the right side. I left all the criteria in there, or all the scoring in there, and just highlighted in green what I think the score would be for these different criteria. I'll highlight, this one actually is in the 20-minute zone, I think, but I just selected the highest one we have, which is 15 minutes. This one, I did say it was difficult to approach from multiple directions, being right across the bridge like it is, kind of funnels all of your routes through one tight area. It is a site where, the UP Depot has a big circle drive. You could probably fit about 5 bays and like an arch around that. And so it scores well on the parking spaces question. You could probably gain, I don't think you'd lose 18 spots there. And so those are just some of the things that we looked at on this, and that resulted in a total score of 13. So keep that in mind as we look at some of these others.
What was the reasoning for traffic flow being low? Like just none of them needing to change direction on street path.
Yeah, no street pattern changes needed. There's not a ton of traffic right in that area. So just thinking about like, no real changes needed at that traffic light that already exists. On Locust right there, that's not like a huge backup traffic area or anything like that. So yeah, just thinking through, I don't think any real street pattern changes. The next one was South Park. So this one, you notice scored a few points higher than the UP Depot. I think as we thought through as staff, we thought that kind of made sense. It is closer to the area, so it scores better in the walking distance question. It does impact park space, we said, so didn't get any extra points for that. UP Depot did. It's in the highest transportation disadvantage zone, as if it is. So like this half is, so we made the assumption to score it that height. In this case, that just how those two relate to each other. This one's slightly better than UP Depot. That kind of felt right to us. I'm not sure the perception of just think about those two sites together. Third site, made some assumptions here, but this is the First Christian Church site. They have a church and a large parking lot for along that block. And so this one, we did go ahead and score the whole list, but we made the assumption, we didn't reach out to them, but we made the assumption that this is a private owner who's not willing to sell. So this is what that would look like. We wouldn't like define a score. We would just say it's off the table. I guess that is a question I would have in the spirit was if there are off the table sites for one of those criteria. Do you want us to still score the rest of the things? I mean, it's off the table to begin with.
I think that's off the table. There's not much need. Like even if it's in a flood zone, right? It's like we're not going to give the federal dollars for that. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know. There's not much discussion.
Yeah, I scored it, and then one of my staff said, I really don't want people trying to argue back onto the table things that are off the table.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's scored well on this. Are we sure we don't want to include it?
Process of elimination factor is a good one in this
Yes.
situation.
Common sense will probably get just.
Yeah.
So in that case, some of the stuff, as I bring things back to you, what I'd rather do is mark whatever for the off the table criteria, if one of them scores that way, just do NA for the rest of these.
Yeah.
So that we don't go through the work and it doesn't create extra discussion. It doesn't actually help. We'll all get to
I think that's fair.
yeah.
I guess how I've been imagining the process is like we have an evaluation fest. Like first we pick this, like the next thing we meet, we have like a stack of papers and they're all evaluated already. And then we go through and see if we disagree or agree with any of the evaluations. And at that stage, we would see that like some of them are just plain off the table.
Sorry for the people. That's what I hope.
Yeah.
That's what I hope September and October look like for this. Is we won't burden you with actually evaluating and scoring. We'll do a pass at it, do our best, and you'll be viewing everything. Have at least a couple of meetings. If we have to extend out, we can.
Okay.
But hopefully that's time to
Coming up.
start.
That helps.
It is. Guys have plans for evaluation fest.
Get t-shirts.
Yeah. I don't it's like spark.
Zag.
So what we're looking at for next steps, I mentioned, the criteria that we come up with today, we'll try to post by tomorrow online. Jeff.
This isn't the point where we'd be talking about like eliminating criteria number 8, that kind of thing.
I do want to go back to that.
Well, I don't know.
I just want to give a high level here of the next steps. So about 3 weeks, a little less than 4 weeks of public comment time. We'll do the online. We'll try to have focus groups or any other in-person stakeholder as close to during that period as we can, because we want to be ahead of the July 15th steering committee meeting. Again, just reiterate, we'll ask your help. Any folks who would be interested in joining one of the online, please be asking those questions in the next few days or weeks so that we can start gathering folks. And by the end of today, I'll get you all date and time possibilities so you have something to share out. I'll try to see how quickly we might be able to get a small handout that could be useful, and that would have been a nice thing to distribute today. But we can see if that's helpful. We can try to get them to you all. And this set of the work is proposed to go before the City Commission on August 6th. So we'll hear some information back from the public at the John meeting. You all want make any additional revisions you want to how we're going to measure sites. Okay, let's get that City Commission.
I'm wondering, that since I don't know, like we're kind of too late in the meeting to really discuss which maybe, but in the public comment for the boundary, there were a lot of folks who were concerned about security and safety in whatever, you know, station ends up getting selected. So I was just wondering if staff had like, you know, thought about what a criteria for, I don't know, for safety might look like. Or
Yeah, it's a good question to ask. I think it would be it's kind of, I think the first thought is it'd be the same to me as lighting or ADA access. No matter what site we select, we're going to make it as safe as possible. And that'll include things like crime prevention through environmental design. So things like lighting, things like we're thoughtful out here at making no kind of blind corners or places people can hide. But the other part of that is just staffing. So, you know, there's already some increased downtown patrol that as long as our site, any site is going to be within their scope of work. We have programmed and not been able to use yet until this site's developed for some additional like contracted, we're calling it like an ambassador position. They are unlikely to carry weapons, but would be an authority figure like an off-duty PD officer for some limited hours at our site. Sure. That could help people figure out what route they need to use and also be like, hey, knock it off. I'm going to call the police, you know, try to quell things that may rise. So sure. I think I would rather, you know, I don't know that it shouldn't be a safer site if it's closer to the law enforcement center than it is 3 blocks from there. Like we should make it a safe site regardless of where we select.
Can we really quickly talk about is the goal of the criteria to start conversation, to tell people what we care about, or it's to communicate with the public mostly, right?
Yeah, I think the criteria are an attempt to get at the values people would have.
Right.
And what's a good site. So I care about that. Good. I'm glad you're taking.
Here's my proposal based on that. We could include the security in the ADA criteria. We could just put like a sentence that says we do care about security here, and that'll be part of the cost evaluation. And then for the park space, we still care about it. It's not going to come up, but maybe we change it to green space or something like that, just to show that it's something we're thinking about. And maybe we don't even include it as a criteria. Maybe we also unfold that into the ADA cost stuff. Well, no, because it really doesn't fit that. Because with the ADA, with the cost one, like I think we should see like an actual number at a certain point, and say like this number's higher, this number's low. So maybe we do leave the park one just to show that like we're willing to talk about this, we're willing to hear public comment about this, and like we're thinking about it, even though it's probably not gonna happen or come up all that much.
Maybe I was gonna say in the traffic flow area, but no, that doesn't really make sense either. Events.
Yeah, I was thinking it might fit under that event thing, but people use the downtown park spaces. It does seem like there potentially are impacts, even if it's just adjacent to a park. Now, does it make it better for people? Does it make it more complicated for people?
And we want to signal to the public that we want to hear from them if they worry that like their favorite green space is going to be altered based on our decision.
But the only green space that I've left on, so what do you do?
Right.
The only
If you built next to it, it could impact people's sense of how they would use that or space.
for better or worse, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, maybe both, so, yeah, or either.
Like I keep thinking about that block between Kentucky and Tennessee that's 7th Street,
Yeah.
between the pool and the park,
Watson.
the green, right. And that would be out of the flood zone because it's up that hill and I don't know. And it wouldn't get in the way of the emergency responders and there'd still be space for people who need to do the weirdness with all the one-way street. I don't know. I just keep thinking about that spot. Because right now it's a really awkward spot because there's cars on both sides parked and people are trying to go through it. And then the Boys and Girls Club bus. Clearly I drive on that street often. Daily.
Well, there's a little detour.
It's a little chaotic there right now. And this actually would maybe calm it down because it would have this very intentional use.
That's something to do.
Swimming pool, season. Or, right, yeah, sure, just like the garage.
So are we leaning toward just leaving that one in there for each?
What do you think, Eddie?
Are we comfortable with that? Okay, so the purpose is we want to have a venue for the public to communicate with us and also to like at least mention it. Is that what we want? So
Yeah, maybe the question needs rephrasing though.
So instead of park, it's green space.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know if the scoring necessarily makes sense with this. Like it's like impact and down.
we could include a positive option maybe.
Sorry,
Yeah, like helps somehow. I don't.
I think I would just leave it at a 1 or a 0 because I think it's pretty straightforward and then we're not trying to weight it in one way or the other.
Or the I don't remember which question that has the neutral. The makes it more access to parks, neutral, makes it negative impact to parks or green space.
You may not know if it's a negative
Right.
until after it's put in place.
True.
I mean, that's
And that's a value-based decision.
yeah, it's really a value based. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if we did positive, neutral, negative, staff could take a crack at, we think it'd be a positive because of this, or we think it'd be a negative because of this, and you all could say, we don't agree with that.
Okay.
I think it's also possible that it's gray. Yeah, maybe everything just gets scored neutral and there's a discussion. There's some information. I don't know.
Seems
At least it addresses the elephant in the room about it. that we've talked about it, ignoring this issue.
I do think once you put this out, if you were to remove that, somebody might see that and say like, oh, they're just going to build it in Watson Park and that would upset, you know, I mean, because I mean, I've already been confronted about the parking lots, which are already off the table. Nice, okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's a good thing to leave it there, whether it's impactful or not. I don't know.
So I am happy to change the scoring to positive impact, neutral, negative impact.
Okay.
Do there's some discussion around park space versus green space.
Is broader better in this because it's really like this is a vibes-based approach. You want to like tell us where does your heart point you in this? Like that's I think should be our goal. Like even if where it's makes it difficult for us to qualify, like I think the goal should be communicating and like prompting discussion. Does that make any sense? I know that was word salad.
No, you're trying to keep within the spirit of the goal.
Yeah, so I think green is better in like green space. Okay.
Like
just park space or green space.
Right. Like
I
easily cut down to go.
Right.
In any survey work, we try to think about layman's language, you know, and like green space might be theoretical to some people.
Well,
I know park
this is confused. I don't know. Park to me, I think of parking space and sprouts and sort of.
I don't know.
It's almost it's like a Joni Mitchell song.
There's a lot of ways to. Is there even a park chance later? Space.
Yeah. I mean, visually, I can show parks. I can't, I don't have, there's no layer for what's considered green space.
Right. Yeah.
It's up cloudies.
Yeah, I think people would probably think about the bank.
Would it make more sense if it was public park or like community park or like some sort of a qualifier in front of park? Would that, because you're not looking at the orchard on Vermont Street. You really do want it. We would, if we were to consider it, it would only be something that was the city owned.
Environment impacted. Now, I don't know.
I'll open up a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We probably have enough to, I bet we can thread that needle.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to think on a little bit, but I hear the intention. We'll do our best at like what will make it obvious to people. I think showing a map with a layer also makes it obvious, like these are the spaces we're talking about.
Any other feedback you'd like? Okay. In the right time.
Yeah, I don't think so. I am interested in to put out this information for
All right.
public.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the draft for the site selection criteria and post to public comment.
Stoked.
Second.
Motion was made, seconded to approve the site selection criteria and post to public comment. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. And our next meeting is July 12th. You got a
Are we
motion?
Are we sure that it's July 12th? Because I know we usually meet on Mondays and
Oh,
July 12th is a Friday.
Oops.
15.
All right, I'm just reading off the agenda here.
Sorry.
Typo, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, the next meeting is July 15th. Thanks, Emily, for catching that.
Yep.
I get a motion to adjourn. Move to adjourn. All right, motion to remain seconded to adjourn at 10:07 a.m. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Those say nay. Motion passes.